This is episode 174 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 174 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Karl Schnitzer on the show all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Karl is one of a more unique guest on the show because I haven't had that many American guests lately, but that's definitely something I want to remedy because there's so much to learn about these different markets in the US. And of course, it's of interest to me because I think there's a lot of money to be made down there. And I am, of course, working towards my investor visa for the US. So in this episode with Karl, we talked all about investing in Philly, what he's been doing. He also had some investments in Pittsburgh, which he divested of. He was up over 70 units at one point, mostly in the single family territory. So we're talking over 50 houses, no small task. And he is a former police officer who got out of that business. And now he's a full-time investor realtor. And really just a wealth of knowledge. He has a very unique and interesting approach. And he's buying houses anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000, putting, maybe another $60,000, $75,000 into them and getting them appraised for anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 and still cash flowing $400 a month. So very different numbers than we might be used to on the north side of the border, especially in the greater Toronto area where I am. It's just a lot harder to make numbers work in that kind of way. And of course, you're getting into much higher numbers with average purchase prices being, much closer to $1 million versus well under $100,000. So super interesting to hear his story and hear how he approaches things and what he's looking to do next. And he also brings up a concept of infinite banking and how he's using that to keep his money working in between deals and then borrow against it. So this is a concept you might have heard of. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and want to talk about this on the show and haven't yet put that together, but we did scratch into that topic on this one. And I'm sure I'm going to get a few comments in my DMs about this as well. So no problem there. I'm of course interested to hear how this works in Canada too. And I do have somebody that I'm tentatively going to be bringing on to talk about this subject. So with that being said, just before we jump into the episode, as always, I want to let you know that it's a huge help to this show to get it into more people's hands if you take the time to rate and review it on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you listen on. And if you are a YouTube watcher, of course, hitting the like, subscribe, and notification bell if you haven't already done that will greatly help, and comments help even more. So if you could do that, it'd be greatly appreciated. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into episode 174 with Karl Schnitzer. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Karl Schnitzer on the podcast. Karl, thanks for doing this.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. I'm really looking forward to it. And we were just mentioning that's a very German first and last name you have. Your parents are German, or?
Yeah, Middle Eastern, mostly German. But everyone always between Schnitzer and Karl with a K. It's pretty obvious that I'm German.
Yeah, that's like the most German sounding name ever. But yeah. I love it. Like my wife and I, we've spent a lot of time in Austria, and then we've been to really? Oktoberfest, and just I love that culture. So it's really cool. But anyways, you are a unique guest on this show because we don't have a ton lately of American guests on the show. And you are out of the Philadelphia area, right?
Yep, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Do you mind just telling me a little bit about yourself in terms of how you got into real estate investing and doing what you're doing right now, and what real estate investing looks for you like for you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I got into real estate, I was actually a police officer for the city of Philadelphia, and as I was a cop and patrolling the streets, the district that I was in the first district that I was in was very bad, very poor. The next district that I was in was completely gentrifying. There was new construction on every single block. You couldn't turn the corner without seeing construction crews and third stories being adding to buildings because they're mostly row homes. And I was just seeing the amount of money flooding the area, and I started networking with some of the flippers that I saw and just kind of dove into real estate education just because I was seeing it all around. And then that kind of led me to, of course, bigger pockets, rich dad, poor dad, all that kind of stuff that really kind of sparked the, fire and the fuel for real estate. Went full force into, education first. I invested in some flips, bought some rental properties locally in Philly, then I kind of expanded my investing out to Pittsburgh, and eventually, from there, I ended up selling Pittsburgh. I only have stuff in Philly now, but I got up to at one time I had like 78 units. I don't anymore. I sold off the majority of them, and in 2020, I finally left the police force and just kind of went into real estate full time as an investor. And then I also, in the mix of all that, got licensed as a realtor. So I was representing myself. I had access to the MLS and all that.
Okay. Obviously going to have many questions, including, the actual market there. Well, first off, how long does it take to become a realtor down there? I think it's a little bit different than it is for us here.
Depends how quickly you do it. If you do the in-person, it's like 2 weeks. If you do the online course, you could finish it in a couple of days.
Oh, okay. Like people take like years. Well, some people take years. I think like if you're going quick here, you're doing it in like 6 months.
Yeah. No, here, I mean, you could, if you really went full time, like you could do a week.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm considering this for my plan. If I end up getting the investor visa to move to Florida, then I would be able to do the same there. I don't know if it's as quick there, but
I encourage it. There's a lot of people have their own opinions, whether being a realtor helps you as an investor. Mm-hmm. And I tend to be on the side that I think it absolutely does.
For information, right?
Information, access to the MLS, which, some investors have that anyway, but representing yourself on both the buy and sale side, to me, when you're doing, 40, 50 transactions as a realtor and an investor, that adds up,
Yeah. Like what's a typical realtor commission in PA or in Philadelphia?
Normally between 5 and 6% split between both sides, either 2.5 or 3 to the buy side, 2.5 or 3 to the sell side.
Mm-hmm. And I was noticing around here, it's a lot more common in some areas to get it, 4.5 split between both sides.
Going down. Yeah.
So it's obviously more expensive there. So, that helps, right? Especially if you're doing a lot of deals. What information can you get as a realtor that you can't otherwise where you are? Because you have access to say like Zillow, which is pretty up to date with comps and everything.
Yeah. The only thing, I don't dislike Zillow. It doesn't have as much information, as the actual MLS does. So when you log in, to your account, you can obviously view all the info. You can see who the listing agent is. Once you're kind of in the realtor space, you start to make friends, a lot of other realtors and investors in the city. So that actually goes a long way. Mm-hmm. If you see something that's coming soon and the listing agent, you shoot him a text, hey, is there any way you could get me in here, fairly quickly, maybe before market? That helps out a lot. I like to see the statistics that you can pull from it. As an investor, that helps a lot when you're pulling your CMA, comparative market analysis to, get your ARV for a project. That helps a lot. Obviously, being able to list it yourself, you can control, the deal a lot better. Maybe not better, but you can control the deal since you are representing yourself.
Yeah. I mean, having your finger on the pulse with a deal is there's benefit to be had there. Negotiate a little bit more off the price. You're also not paying the middleman who's not as motivated to save a few bucks as you might be.
It also helps.
There's a lot there.
If you're a wholesaler, there's some ethics guidelines that, may limit you to with your wholesaling business. But if you're the investor yourself, you're, either going to buy it, flip it or hold it. Well, wholesale it, flip it or hold it. Approaching a seller as a licensed realtor, I think adds a lot of credibility, to you and your company.
That's actually a very interesting point. And the other part of it is if you're willing to just flip it as a wholesale, having that in there, of course, you can come in and say, hey, I'd like to buy your property direct. But if you choose not to, I have other people I could sell it to privately, or we could list it and you can offer them all 3 options.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done that many times where really you can get, 4 options. Hey, I can wholesale this. I can buy it myself and I'll flip it. I can buy it myself and rent it, or I can list it on market for you, and then you can kind of adjust your price on what your exit is going to be. So
I think for a wholesaler's motivation, knowing that all those there's going to be a lot of people you talk to that just want to list, And you could be the listing agent and monetize that, but if you're not a realtor, you can't really, unless you have a really good realtor partner that will pay you, for the leads. Which I don't know. I guess there might be some red tape with that and what you're allowed to pay for or not.
There's a little bit of legality with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a gray area, so people aren't that comfortable with it. So yeah, then becoming the realtor yourself, now all of a sudden you have the option, you can do that. So that's pretty cool. What's it cost like on an annual basis to keep your license there?
So every 2 years you have to do re-education. That's a couple $100. To hold your license, depending on what brokerage you park your license with, the monthly cost is going to vary. There's some brokerages that don't charge you monthly. However, they may not include, conveyancing or E&O insurance, things like that. I'm with Remax for many reasons, and I pay monthly to be a part of Remax. It kind of varies. I always tell people though, because, when you get your sales license, think of it as a business with startup costs, like when my sister recently got licensed, and I remember telling her the coursework may cost you $1,000, but I would budget about $10,000. Think of it as startup costs for a business. Even after the coursework, you need to invest in marketing, you need to invest in signs, you need to invest in all kinds of things to get the business up and running. I mean, there's a reason. I think the success rate in the whole US maybe is like 5% of realtors actually are successful. And I think that's, changing your mindset to, hey, this is a business and there's startup costs to the business versus, oh yeah, I can pay, $1,000 like it's a college degree and then go out and just work.
No, you need, and I would encourage anybody who's thinking about doing it, like have a mentor, have a coach, like have somebody that's successful that you can model after. Because if you go out and try and invent the wheel, you're just gonna waste time and waste money.
That goes across any industry. I'm big on mentorship and investing in education.
Yeah, and it'll show in your results, right? Like if you. There's nothing wrong with copying somebody who's successful and copying their approach. And then down the road, you can innovate a bit once you know what you're doing.
I think the quote's like, good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yeah.
Steal the same framework.
So I've been a musician for most of my life, and I always found songwriting so difficult. And the only way I could make it easy was if I could steal ideas from multiple different songs. I'm like, if I just relied on one, I'd end up sounding like that song. But what if I took the way they sang that song and the way this instrumentation was, and then you come up with something unique?
Behind my curtain, I have like 10 guitars maybe, and piano, a couple drum sets, and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. You'll have to send me a picture of that collection after we're done. I'd love to see it. I need a new jam space. My podcast studio took up my jam space, so we'll have to figure that one out as we go. How long were you a police officer? Like what age were you when you started, and when you said you just quit a couple years ago?
I guess 22 through 26. I only did 4 years. And some of that was police academy time. So it wasn't long, in the grand scheme of things. I wasn't even vested in the pension, which is a 10-year minimum. Okay. And, I was basically 2020 is when I left. We had all kinds of riots here and it just crazy nonsense going on. And at that point I had, rental income coming in. I had income from flips. I had income from insurance that I do. And my wife and I, we kind of just sat down and we were like, look, the money's not worth the risk anymore, and it was a time commitment, putting 40 plus hours a week into something, that's trading time for money versus I knew if I focused full time on investing, I would grow a lot quicker. It was a big, kind of change in everything. When you can focus full-time hours into investing, the needle moves pretty quickly.
Yeah. And that's definitely true. Like I wish I could say I'm like full-time investing, but I do so many things and, yeah, exactly. If I was just focused on finding deals, I can only imagine how many I would be bringing in for sure. So on that note, like what's your typical week look like? Like what are the primary activities you engage in? And give me an idea of what you're like trying to do in a year. Are you trying to do like 10 flips or 10 acquisitions to keep? Like what's your goal in a year?
I guess I should have goals written down. Right now, I'm kind of taking a pause on buying. Not so much for any reason that I think the market's going to crash, more so that I want to switch markets where I'm investing. and I haven't taken the time to research the new markets that I want to go into, actually go drive around them, learn, who the players are in that market, the other investors. So that's kind of the reason why I'm pausing. So I only have like a dozen units left, and they're all in Philadelphia. And I want to transition out of investing in Philadelphia. The flip market here is good, but the rental market is pretty tenant friendly. Just for example, I had one issue that took 2 years to get a squatter out of a house.
Oh, really? So,
Yeah.
so the laws are what's affecting.
Definitely. Yeah. It's very tenant friendly.
What would you be buying? Like, what's your bread and butter, like, type of building to go after in Philly?
So, I mean, I've done the past few years, like your typical BRRRR investment. I mean, that's how I built the whole portfolio.
Like a duplex or a single family?
More so single family.
Okay.
I haven't had anything more than 4 units. That's been my max between singles, duplex, triplex, 4 units. What I'm really targeting now is higher, not higher, but more, unit multifamily, like maybe in like the 12 to 30 unit kind of sweet spot. I don't syndicate, and I have no intention to syndicate. Everything that I have, I want to be the full owner of. People have their own opinion of that. That's my cup of tea. That's what I want to do. So right now, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm not going to pass up. If I see like a base hit or, a single or a double, I'll still pick it up, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking mainly for that, like, 10 to 30 unit would be awesome.
Yeah. And ideally not in Philadelphia for the legalities.
Yeah, not in Philadelphia. There's pros and cons, but Philly is, you can just research the news. Philly is pretty crazy, everything that's going on now.
Yeah. It would be I would assume be a tenant friendly place. Now, is it the city's laws or the state's laws that are creating that?
A little bit of both. Yeah. I mean, so like that one case that I had with 2 years trying to get this person out, there's a lot of things that kind of combined with that between, between local level rules and regulations, state level, and then we had the federal eviction moratorium. So there was a lot of things that played into that.
Yeah, that's insane. The whole CDC thing.
Oh my gosh.
Which it was I remember hearing somebody say like they didn't even have the power to do that. But,
yeah. 2 years it took me. I bought a house in February of 2020, did not get her out until February of 2022.
Wow. Well, I had one of the guys that came on my podcast, a Canadian guy investing in New York, and he I forget which town it was in, but he said that similar issue, people not being kicked out, and what it did is it actually increased average rent by $100 or $200 a year for all new leased units.
Yeah. Rent
because it doesn't help.
I mean, that's the one good thing Philly has going for it is that you can pick up, properties. My kind of like average deal looks like a between 50 and 60K purchase, rehab, full gut between like 60 and 80,000, maybe a little bit higher with current prices. But then on the back end, you can get an ARV value between 150 and 200, depending on the neighborhood. So you can do a pretty good, BRRRR investment, and the rents support it. I mean, I'm buying stuff right now. My last deal that I bought, I picked it up for $58,000 and I have it rented currently for $1,200 a month. And my rehab on that was pretty low. So
what was your rehab on that ballpark?
That one was like $15,000, but I didn't replace the heater or the roof. It was more so just some cosmetic stuff.
Okay. So if you were to have done the full shebang on that, what would it have been, like 60,000 or something?
Probably about, around 60. If you're doing heater and roof, slightly more, Philly's all flat roofs for the most part where we're investing. It's not like suburbs with big shingles. You can do a full roof replacement for $5,000 in Philly. So
you're just using like a membrane type product where it'll seal. Yeah.
Yep. So it's all pretty, cut and dry. I stick to the market in the neighborhood that I like is actually where I worked as a cop. So I know the area really well. I know, cops, if I have any issues in that area, I know, where I'm investing is like class lower C, D areas. So I think there's good and bad parts to that. The good part is that, those neighborhoods scare away a lot of people, whereas that's where I worked. I know it, really well. And, one thing I learned and from being a cop in that area, one of the things I'm most grateful for having been in law enforcement, is that I've learned that even in those, quote unquote ghetto areas, poor areas, whatever you want to call it, there's so many good people there that make awesome tenants. Everyone thinks that, oh, if you're investing in this bad area, your tenant selection is all going to be, like a bad, tenant selection, Section 8 and everything like that. And that's completely false. I mean, there's good people that still live in those areas just because one, they can't afford more, or that's where they grew up. That's where all their family lives. They know that area well, and they choose to live there. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of like, my tenants are awesome. And like when I got a lot of backlash when I was a cop for buying in those areas, because people are like, oh, dude, you're crazy. Why would you ever buy there? There was a shooting there last week, this or that or whatever. Like, that's great. My tenants are awesome. They don't do any of that nonsense. They're all working class. I take care of them. I take care of the house. They take care of me. It's a win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Now, how do you screen in an area like that? Like, walk me through your screening process.
So I don't screen them myself. I have a property manager that does everything. Okay. Once I finish the renovation, the key goes to my property manager. Yeah. He does tenant selection. He screens it. And that's it. I'll see them if I'm in the area and I got to get, pictures for the insurance company or whatever, and meet them. But I do not do that myself anymore.
Okay. And do you have any sort of insight on what he's doing? Like, is he doing criminal background checks on them? Like, how deep is his due diligence on tenants?
He does background check. Yeah. I mean, he'll do background check, credit score, like income, all that kind of stuff. A lot of his tenants have been with him for 15, 20 plus years. He's, older than I am, former investor himself with, a few hundred units in the area. He manages himself, and he's got a whole team in place. So he is the manager, but he has a whole team there. And a lot of the tenants, he's slowly selling off his portfolio. So as tenants are moving out, he's pushing them into units he's managing for other people like myself, where, I've had tenants where he didn't do any, kind of screening, because one tenant has been leasing off of him for like 28 years or something ridiculous now in one of my houses, but she's been with him for, almost 30 years.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a bad tenant to have.
Yeah, I really don't have a good screening process because I don't do it myself. And to be honest, I really don't know what he does. I trust him with it all. So I haven't had any bad issues. Okay. The only issues I've ever had with tenants were inherited tenants, ones that we didn't place.
Yeah, and I know that feeling. You'll somehow that consistently is a problem for every investor. Inherited tenants. I mean, it's a shame too, because I'll see, even like last week I looked at a deal and the numbers would work, but I'm not going through the hassle of removing a tenant again. It's not going to work. It's not worth the headache anymore. Interesting to know. Now, just to jump back to this deal you're talking about. So you had you said 15,000. Let's just assume you put in the 60. What would that have been worth? With the 58,000 purchase, $60,000 renovation.
With the 60,000 renovation, you probably get above 150. With my small renovation, we appraised for like 125. So it was still, a great deal where I was able to recoup my money. Okay. And
you got a 125. Okay, let's run the numbers based on 125. Doing a little basic renovation. So
we'll say 58. We'll say 60,000 was purchase. Reno was like 14 and change. We'll say 15. So I was all in around 75 plus closing costs. I got a commission on it. We won't even count that. I was all in. It was around like, I want to say probably 82,000 or so with all the transfer tax.
82.
Stuff like that.
Oh, you have like a land transfer tax?
Yeah, we have to pay state and city transfer tax.
Dang, yeah, that's like it is here in Ontario.
That's Philly's always got to have their hand in something.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. What would you pay on tax, like for that house, annual property taxes?
Oh, cheap. Maybe like I think they're $550, maybe $600, which is one of the reasons too I like the, quote unquote lower end housing, because my mortgage on that after I refied is, I don't know, $400 or $500 a month. I'd have to look it up. Property taxes a year or $500. You can have 12 months of reserves with just, a few $1,000s. It's not like your mortgage is $1,500 and you need, $15,000 to feel secure. you can, with these houses, you can feel secure with $6,000 in the bank reserves for that account.
Yeah, you're making me want to invest in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah, Phil. I mean, it depends. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're local. Just knowing the area,
right?
So
Yeah.
But there's pros to Class C, Class D neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You talk to like some of the bigger investors, like Cardone's big on Class A only, and you know what? If we hit a recession or a depression, those Class A people are going to be coming down into Class B and C.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to drop down a class. Yeah. What would you pay on that house you were just describing for insurance annually?
I believe it's like $750 a year.
Oh, that sounds nice, man. These numbers sound really appealing. Maintenance. What do you budget on an annual for maintenance?
10% normally.
10%. Yeah, you're getting into low enough numbers that you got to kind of budget 10%. So that's still only $1,440 a year.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is like $400 a month cash flow. $400
a month cash flow.
Right, and if I can pull out all of my money, that's great.
Yeah.
If I pull out more, even better. Yeah. But I won't pull out more, even though everyone could have their own argument on why you should, but I won't pull out more if I'm not getting that like 400 plus range cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So,
interesting.
If I can refi out 75% loan to value, but that'll take me to a cash flow of like 300, I would rather personally pull out maybe 65, 70% loan to value to keep my cash flow higher. Yeah. And that's more so just an OCD thing than it is an actual,
we all have our systems. Yeah, we all have our systems, like something that lets us sleep at night. So I don't fault you for that. I think that's smart, sticking with what feels comfortable. Management wise, what are you paying?
So people don't believe me. I pay 4% in management,
including leasing.
Yes. Well, no. So he'll take 1 month, first month rent for leasing.
So what does that average out to then? So you're 4% plus leasing, but you probably only lease every 3 years on average?
Any tenant he has placed has not left yet.
Never left. So we almost just want to treat that as an investment.
And so technically his management is just rent collection.
Mm-hmm.
So however, for me and the amount of properties I have with him, he'll still take phone calls and manage it for me. But the majority of people he's managing, he just does rent collection for 4%. Mm-hmm. So he'll go around literally every month and door knock, either pick up cash or a check. There's no like online system for management. He's old school.
That's the insane part, is the amount of people, I guess it's the class of tenant you're dealing with, is they will actually pay rent.
Yeah. So this guy, he's probably in his late 60s now. And he has told me before, one of his like keys to successful management is, hand collecting rent. These tenants know he'll be there every month knocking on the door. It's not an app that they have to pay for. And if they don't pay for it, he's not coming. He'll be there within the first week of every single month knocking for rent,
Yeah. It sounds like a very different world from the way we do things here, but this is why it's so important to know where you're investing and know what's normal.
Definitely.
I think, similar things were happening with the Youngstown, Ohio properties I had. But again, I wasn't involved directly, but I do believe it was the same. Of course, my property manager was just keeping the rent, so that didn't help. But I live and learn. Do you have any other expenses on that? Like, do you landscape, or probably not? They probably take their
these are all row homes. Yeah, we don't do landscaping.
Are there HOA fees or condo fees?
No. Some of the houses I'm in charge of water. Some of the houses tenants are in charge of it. It depends on their lease and kind of what we negotiated that time. But
this one that we were just talking about, are you paying water there?
No water.
No water there. So
water, gas, and electric.
Your management's like $570 a year. You have no landscaping. You've we could even just leave like $100 for miscellaneous there, I guess. This
one in particular, I am expecting some more maintenance costs than normal, since I didn't do the full, renovation to it. So I'll probably put a little bit more than 10% aside.
Okay.
But for the most part, those are my kind of cookie cutter deals.
Okay. Well, even if we put in 15%, like that's $2,000 a year, I think that's a very reasonable number. That still puts you at a 8.2% cap rate, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you refinance that one based on the 125 at 75% loan to value?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And 30-year amortization?
30-year AM rate was kind of crazy on it. The refi lender that I'm using, since I'm self-employed investor only now, I don't have any kind of W-2 income anymore. So I get these no doc refi loans, and the rates are a little bit higher. This one was like 6.625 or something.
Really? I'm surprised it's that high for you, because I've heard numbers less than that being like Canadian.
Tier 1 credit too. I mean, my credit's perfect, and that was the best I could get. Normally, my old numbers prior to like 2022, I was refining for like 4.5, which was a lot better.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, we're over 6 easily with tier 1 credit.
Okay. All right. So I'll share with you the company I've been talking to. I don't know, how they're going to work out in the long run, but they've told me numbers lower than that for right now. Maybe it's useful for you to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got, I'm showing 260 a month cash flow, but obviously I beefed up the maintenance, and I put in a miscellaneous amount for just anything that might come up. But that's still, I look at that as you've got a buffer there. We've budgeted well for our maintenance. Obviously you're not actually paying that on a monthly. It's going to be those surprise things that come up you have to deal with. So that actually looks, pretty reasonable. Like I'd buy deals all day long at that if I could predictably do that. And plus you are a perfect BRRRR on that one with $26,000 back in your pocket.
Yeah. That one I'm thinking now. So this was in December, was the last deal that I bought. Actually, no, sorry. I bought it in December, refied it in February. My cash flow is a little bit more than that. I'll have to pull up my pro forma and see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, either way, it's a healthy market where I'm at.
Okay. So you don't worry about vacancy, or what's your feel on vacancy? How big of a concern is it?
It's really not a concern. Maybe it should be, but I haven't experienced it yet. There's such a strong demand for renting right now in the market that I'm at that, even if somebody did leave with a quick cleaning, maybe, carpet paint, whatever it needs, you can get at least easily, for the same amount or more.
Okay. And what's the worst thing that's happened, in terms of like across all these 80 some odd doors you've had, in terms of a tenant experience? Like what's the worst of it? How bad's it getting? How'd you deal with it?
So I've had like the 2-year squatter was pretty bad. That was, annoying. It was kind of funny too. So one of our houses in Pittsburgh, you get to a point where these were all like single family duplex, triplex. And, I would recognize the address if I saw it, but I couldn't tell you all 70 some, it was like 55 houses or so. I couldn't tell you all of them off the top of my head. And one time our property manager in Pittsburgh, he texted my partner and I on those Pittsburgh deals. I had a partner, and it was like a news link of like SWAT busted down door of this one, but it was like a mother and a daughter selling drugs or whatever it was. And we texted back. We were like, man, like sucks for them. And he's like, you guys own this one. We're like, oh crap. We didn't even realize, we didn't recognize the address until he said it. So that one was kind of funny. I mean, we had to completely redo that. City does not pay for the door after they bust it down. We learned that. So
interesting.
Yeah, it was, that was a funny one. We've been pretty lucky. We got hit hard in 2020 in the Pittsburgh stuff with tenants not paying. We were grateful and luckily we had some forbearances from the mortgage company over the whole portfolio. So, I wouldn't say 2020 was necessarily easy. Luckily, we didn't have to contribute any money. However, our cash flow did significantly drop on all that. So that was kind of tough. I think it's all part of the game though. And that's kind of where having your reserves, comes in.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, even if you look at like the SWAT going into that one, and then you had squatters, if you look at your overall profitability on your portfolio, even when those things happen, if you just sort of budget that those things are going to happen with the type of class you invest in, and if the model still works, then you don't look at the micro so much. You just budget for it. Oh yeah, that happened. But overall, I'm still very profitable. That's the way I would look at that.
Yeah. That's similar how we do it too. So, and then, where we kind of keep our reserves anyway, I don't know if you're familiar with like the infinite banking concept. We keep all of our reserves inside insurance contracts anyway. So that money's growing, even as it's sitting in reserves.
So you buy insurance policies with a cash value and then borrow against them, basically.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so anything you pull out of these houses, if it's still cash flow, throw it into an insurance policy, and then you can just borrow back against that when you want.
That's my strategy. Yeah. So I keep the majority of, liquidity, both business and personal stuff in insurance contracts. That's going to grow, uninterrupted, compounded. You can access up to 90% of it, whenever you want. So if any issues having any kind of big, capital expenditure or anything, you can pull from it and pay. So,
and what's your percentage growth typically inside of your insurance portfolio?
It depends on the carrier. I mean, you can see anywhere from 4 to 6%. And that's, you get a guaranteed rate and then you get a dividend on top of the guarantee. So I work for a firm as well that specializes in designing these contracts. The, 4 to 6 may not, wet your whistle. However, it's a savings account. It's not the investment. It's the way to think about it is it's the high interest savings account that can fund the investment. It's not the actual investment.
Yeah. I mean, that's a handy tool if you can make a little bit of a return and then I borrow against it. As far as interest rate, when you borrow against it, what are you paying?
Between 3 and 4%, depending on
still profitable overall.
Product. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I keep getting people bug me to come on the show and talk about infinite banking. I'm like, we just talked about it.
Yeah. It's, I don't think so. I mean, if the majority of your audience is in Canada, we, like my firm that I work at, cannot write policies in Canada, but we have a partner that we work with that can. I think it's a little bit different on the licensing laws around it. So we're, we do 49 states in the US, everywhere but New York.
Everywhere but
New York.
Oh, I was going to say not Hawaii or something.
New York makes it too hard to maintain your license that it's not even worth it.
Gotcha. Interesting. I can't imagine them doing that.
No, not at all.
Okay. So what are you looking at now? Like what's the ideal place for you to invest, or what are some markets that you're looking at and saying, hey, the grass is greener over there?
So I don't like to go out of state, and again, people have their own, kind of philosophy around investing. A lot of people, I'm sure, can make a ton of money investing out of state, but me personally, I'm kind of hands-on and I want to be able to go to the buildings if needed. So I'm looking kind of like in a 5-hour radius right now around me for investing markets. And, if anyone's listening is familiar with Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, where I'm kind of targeting right now, it's called the Lehigh Valley. And that consists of like a couple towns called like Allentown, Bethlehem, Reading, Pennsylvania. It's outside of Philly. I know some investors out there that are doing really well. It's fairly close, to me, where I can go look at stuff myself. I've never bought anything sight unseen, and I'm not a fan of doing that. Just me personally, I like to go walk everything myself or send somebody I trust, to go look at something. But I haven't got comfortable investing out of state yet.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So are you near like the Lehigh Tunnel? I've driven through there.
Kind of, yeah. So that's like Poconos area.
Yeah.
So Lehigh Valley is just south of the Poconos.
Yeah. So I know where Allentown is. Okay. Really nice town that I've been to a bunch is Bryn Mawr. I don't know if you ever go up there.
So Bryn Mawr is just outside of Philadelphia. Actually, I got a deal in my email today. Bryn Mawr.
Bryn Mawr would be a sweet place to own. Like, I feel like it's very affluent. Like it's there's a lot of money there.
A lot of money. Yeah. A lot of the like Philadelphia sports players live out there.
Oh, okay. But would the numbers work up in a place like that? I mean, obviously your rents are probably a bit higher, but the property prices are way more.
Yeah. Flipping it would work. Renting, probably not.
Yeah. Not as ideal for that.
You got place. If you flip out that way, you got to go pretty high end finishes with everything. A lot of money.
And I wouldn't like that for the very simple fact that I can't rent it out if the market goes soft and now all of a sudden it's not worth as much. Now, my only option is to either rent it out and lose money every month or sell it and lose money now. I don't like either of those options. So that's why I wouldn't really be keen on that. Worst case, maybe if you're flipping and your worst case is a break even rental, I guess, things could be worse. But to do it knowing you lose sucks.
I like to look at, I'm sure, there's investors out there making a ton of money. But to me, and kind of just where I'm at, the liquidity that I have, to me, I would feel too risky doing that. If the market went south or the rehab budget went over, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night just, with peace of mind that, it's a potential loss on a deal. The stuff that I'm buying now, I like it because my loans, I'm not dealing with a lot. 60 to me, at least like $60,000 to $80,000 mortgage. To me, that's not really risky.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you figure too, like 12 months worth of mortgage payments. I mean, you figure if your mortgage is, I don't know, at most maybe $650 a month, you could have 12 months of mortgage payments for $7,800.
Yeah.
And
that's a pretty solid place to be.
Yeah.
Those numbers just sound so different from here. Like people around where I am, like they're buying a house to BRRRR, turn it into a duplex for $800,000. They're buying it at 800, and it'll be worth like 1 to 1.1 when they're done. And yeah, it'll bring in 4,500, 4,300 in rent, but those numbers are they don't work nearly like your numbers work. I'd rather have 4 houses than one like that.
Yeah. I'm not like a Dave Ramsey follower by any means. However, there's like a sweet spot with how much debt I'm okay with. I understand good debt versus bad debt, but I'm not one of those people that likes millions and millions of dollars of debt. Even when I had the Pittsburgh portfolio and everything and was 7 figures, in debt, we had equity, don't get me wrong, but I did not like that feeling,
No, it's not a fun feeling. It's something that Canadians have conditioned themselves with, though. Like, I mean, especially in the areas like where I live, it's an inevitability if you want to invest around here.
Like the average kind of purchase price in your market right now?
Like the average purchase price across Canada now is over $700,000.
Oh my gosh!
That's the whole country, including all the really cheap areas. Like in Burlington, I've got to assume it's over $1 million.
What's the average income?
Oh, like 60, 70 grand a person.
How do people do that?
They don't do it smart. Like, I mean, this is why Canada is so left leaning, because I mean, a lot of people are giving up. They're giving up on the thought of home ownership. Yeah. I mean, how could you not? When you look at the prospects of home ownership, I mean, outside of our real estate investor community where we get it, it's a really quick way to make people not think about having a family if they think, why try? I'll just, live in mom and dad's basement for now. And then I don't need to get my own home, which is too hard anyway, because the incomes won't make sense.
Right.
It's a tricky thing.
The whole U.S. average home price is $270,000.
Right. And that includes places like New York City and, LA where the prices are insane. And so there's a lot more options. That's why I really like the US as a prospect. I really like Florida right now. And, Southwest Florida, I'm kind of picking one of the cheapest markets in that whole area to invest in, because I feel like you said, if a recession happens, people are going to pick the cheaper area to go to, not the more expensive one. So some people who might have picked Naples will now pick Cape Coral, and that's to my benefit. So, it's tough these days to figure out a recession-proof plan, but it sounds like you've got a very good one because you're into some of the most affordable housing, and I love that concept.
Yeah, it's affordable housing, and then I'm very confident and comfortable with the reserves that I have within the insurance contract. So, that's not invested in any stock, so it can't go down. It's guaranteed interest, even though it's not much, but it's there, and it's kind of peace of mind. I'm a pretty low risk, conservative-ish investor. I just don't, I don't know. I don't like to get on board with like the, people in Orange County flipping millions, $1 million homes. To me, that's like way too much risk. I guess it depends on your personal situation, but
in times like when things are good, everybody looks like a genius, right? And when you're flipping those high-end homes, you look like a genius until you don't, right? So if you're on the gravy train, you got to know that might stop one day. And a lot of people aren't prepared for that. So there are a lot of people who look like geniuses right now here and in the US. Like it's I forget who said this. I think it was a Warren Buffett quote, but you won't see until the tide goes out who's been swimming without shorts on. Yeah. And we very, very well may see that soon. Now, I do want to ask you your thoughts on the market there, interest rates rising, what's happening to home prices, because across the US, I believe 2 straight years of 15% or higher property appreciation.
Yeah. So honestly, I really don't have like a great opinion on it. Obviously being a realtor, I have clients and they ask me that all the time, like daily, what I think's happening. And so I'm in the middle. There's experts saying that it's going to crash, and there's experts saying that it's not going to crash. And I understand both sides. Both sides kind of make sense to me. Mm-hmm. What I'm personally doing is looking at what, institutions are doing, people that are way smarter than I am, and they're all still buying. They're buying single family homes like they never have before.
Which institutions are you referring to? Like Blackstone and
BlackRock, Vanguard, any of the big institutions.
Yeah.
I sit on a call every quarter with this group. The guy's a Harvard economist, and he gives like a real estate state of union. And basically on the last one, what he said was that the high, pricing that we're experiencing is just simple economic supply and demand. Demand's high, supply is low, therefore price is going to be high. There's a lot of things causing that and going to cause it to get worse. So in that sense, he's predicting prices are going to rise, which I understand. It makes sense. There's baby boomers, which were once the largest generation. All their kids are at the age to buy homes now. So the demand for housing is huge. Everyone wants to buy a house. Everyone has all this new imaginary money that was printed. They have the money to buy a house. The builders can't keep up with it. Between supply chain issues, nobody wants to work. They have no labor. They can't keep up with the demand. So the price is going to continue to rise. That's the one side, which, I understand with. Then you look at the other side that, well, with interest rates rising, people won't be able to afford as much. Therefore, prices are going to come down. I'm like, that makes sense. I'm kind of in the middle where I understand both sides. And I feel like, we're in unprecedented times. So, my personal opinion is that anyone that has a confident opinion is kind of like, I don't want to say like full of crap, but you can't base anything right now off of previous periods in history because we're in unprecedented times. We've never had this much debt. We've never had this high. Well, we've had high inflation, but we've never had this much, outstanding debt. The U.S. is what, $20 trillion, something stupid like that. It's crazy, and we can't base what's going on now with the past.
The one tricky thing, like I knew why Canada had hugely outpaced demand from supply. In the US, there is a big supply of housing. It just depends on where you go, right? You can go to cities that have had houses boarded up for years, and all they really need is, some love. Whereas I don't know that you have the immigration problem we have here in Canada, where they're bringing so many people into the country and they just can't keep up. Like you said, cannot keep up, can't get labor, supply chain issues. We're doing 400,000 new immigrants and only 200,000 new houses. So it's a recipe for prices to go up. Now, like you said, interest rates go up, people can afford less. I see them as competing forces. We have many competing forces, and it's a question of where things will land. And so I like the way you put it. I like the way you put it. I had almost this exact same discussion on my last podcast. And it's interesting to see people who haven't talked to each other having the exact same thoughts on the matter. And I tend to believe that it isn't all doom and gloom for real estate investors. Buy fundamental real estate and be willing and able to ride things out if needed, if and as needed.
Yeah. I mean, I got a text yesterday, somebody asking me, they sent me a deal they were looking at. He was another cop friend of mine. And, I'm always willing to help out other law enforcement and first responders. And he was like, hey, what do you think about this deal? And I said, well, what's kind of your game plan with it? And, what I told him and what I'm telling other people is, if you intend to hold the property for, 10 years, more than that, you're going to be fine. Even if the market does come down slightly, you're not a short-term investor. So really, like, as long as you can refi before that, you're fine. If you're intending to buy for 2 or 3 years and then sell it, that's when you could see, I don't think you'd be underwater, but you may not be exactly where you want to be. It's crazy too. I mean, just so, knowing your market's so important too, because, in Philly, we have several counties surrounding us. There's Delaware County, Bucks County, Montgomery County. And if you look at, this is where it helps being a realtor too, having the statistics, those counties pricing are ridiculous because everyone's fleeing the city. Everyone is trying to get out of Philadelphia because of just how poorly it's run. Every city department is terrible and everyone wants to flee. The crime rates, we were at one point leading the whole country in homicides in like early March, and they're not doing anything about it. So everyone's trying to get out of Philly, which, demand is already high, looking at the grand scheme of things, but in these suburb counties, demand is so high because everyone's fleeing the city. So it used to be like you could get a suburb house, like a, you know, nice single family detached home for between 250 and 300,000 in the suburbs. And now that's like $500,000 or more, 500,000-600,000. And those houses that are going for 500,000-600,000, they're all going cash, no contingencies, no appraisals, nothing. It's very competitive, you know, even as a realtor, because I still have some clients that I work with. It's tough if you don't have cash to get an offer landed right now.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear that going on. And I've seen much of the same, you know, obviously from what I've been doing in Florida, like seeing the people just flocking to Florida.
Oh, Florida's crazy. Florida and
similar
Texas.
reasons, right? Because people look at Florida and Texas as the wild, you know, free land where you can, you know, you can still live a normal life. And especially with all the, you know, even Philly just reinstated their mask mandate and then it got done away with, right?
4 days later or something.
It didn't work. Oh yeah, we decided not to. The science changed.
They're concerned with that, but not with the, you know,
homicides.
massive amount of homicides and shootings we have.
Yeah, it's the upside down. I call it life in the upside down. Lately, all we do is we live in the upside down. But you know, so these places where, you know, people can still live in a relatively sane environment where maybe there's just less government intervention and less need for it as well. And I think that makes a ton of sense why people are going to the suburbs, because you're around people who have similar values, probably, you'd hope, and, you know, not nearly as busy and congested and filled with things that could happen and need government intervention. So interesting to see that. So I think it's really more of a game as us investors have to look at where will people be going in 5 to 10 years? Because it's a matter of the movement of people. And this is another conversation I had on my last podcast. You know, where are people moving and where will they be moving in the future? And all it would take for Florida or Texas to turn course would be, you know, maybe the election goes the other way next time. And maybe policies start going in a way that drive people away. It could happen, right? So that's a tricky thing to navigate and to know long term. Like obviously states where you can go and you know this is a heavily, you know, conservative area, it's likely to stay that way, and the politics kind of dictate how business is done. Then you know, and it could work the other way too. Is if you know that an environment works, you know, in a Democrat neighborhood, then you know as long as it stays consistent. So that's the trick, right?
And I mean, just kind of like you said, you know, knowing where the crowd is going is probably key to all that.
And we don't have that answer, right? Like you don't know if maybe in 10 years people are all flocking back to PA or Philadelphia, right?
I mean, who knows? After watching, I watched that 2,000 Mules the other day. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I got to check that out. I heard about that. Apparently it's been, we probably get my YouTube video delisted for saying that.
Probably, yeah.
Might have to beat that part out.
I won't say my opinion on it then.
Yeah. There's a movie by, his last name's D'Souza, right?
Yeah, Denise or something.
Yeah. That's as much as we'll say. People can look that up. Okay, Karl, where should people find you, follow you, reach out to you?
Yeah, so Instagram is, you know, you can put in the description, maybe Schnitz93. If you're interested in infinite banking or learning how we use insurance to fund our deals, our website's producerswealth.com. You can go on there. It's a quick little, you know, form. If you put Karl in the how did you hear about us, or the podcast info or anything, it'll get sent to me. You know, I'm always willing to hop on a strategy call, answer any questions you have in regards to infinite banking. Other than that, you know, social media is kind of best way to reach out.
Yeah, awesome. And is there anything else you wanted to cover or you wish I'd asked you, or words of wisdom you'd like to share?
No, just keep on learning. Lifelong learner, you know?
Yeah, that's the way to be, right? Never assume you know the answer. Keep trying to strive for it, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think people graduate, you know, high school, college, and they think learning is done after that.
Yeah.
You know, they don't take the time to read, you know, mentorships, courses, all that kind of stuff.
And I've said this repeatedly, but the older I've gotten, the more I realize that I didn't know anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And if only I had started that way, right? Like, you know, when I got done university, I assumed I had a lot of the answers, a lot more than I should have. So, all right, very cool. It's nice finally connecting with you and having a conversation. I know we've messaged back and forth over the years on Insta. So appreciate this, and hopefully we can meet face to face sometime.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. I hope your listeners got some, you know, value.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, this was fun. All right. Thanks a lot, Karl. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Please make sure to share this episode far and wide. Help it help more people. I really appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.